Welcome to DeFi by Design, where we talk all things blockchain and cryptocurrency while striving to educate, empower, and enrich.
What's up, guys? Just want to take a quick break and tell you about our sponsors for DeFi Slate. So first, we have 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵. 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 is an all-in-one DeFi yield farming platform. They actually offer dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and Ethereum uncollateralized loans. And their mainnet just launched. It's called Delphi, and they actually just filled it up to a cap, and they have governance launching soon. Check out 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵.io for more. And then we have MCDEX. MCDEX is the first decentralized perpetual swap exchange. They offer up to 10x on Ethereum perpetual swaps and 5x on Link, as well as Lend and SNX, completely decentralized trading. Check them out on mcdex.io. Both these platforms are extremely active in the DeFi space, and their protocols are growing, and the users are as well. So check those out, and we'll get right back to the podcast now. What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 7 of the DeFi by Design podcast. We are here with Andrew and Michael from REN Protocol. Absolutely excited for this one. REN has been on our radar for months now. Absolutely great project. And we are here with Rob. How you doing today, Rob?
I'm doing well, Andy. Definitely excited to have REN on the podcast. I know we've talked to, quite a few protocols, but REN has some unique differentiators that I'm interested in hearing about. They're certainly, around DeFi quite a bit, and where we might have been focused on the liquidity farming, I'm definitely excited to hear more about collateralization and everything about wrapping Bitcoin and the REN protocol as well. So excited to have them on.
Yeah. Awesome. So we have Andrew and Michael here today. We'll let them intro themselves and explain how they fit with REN, and we'll dive right into it.
Hey guys, pleasure being here, and thanks for having us. Michael Burgess, I oversee operations here at REN. I've been with the organization since early 2018, so it's definitely been a fun journey. Thanks for having us, and looking forward to it.
Thanks for having us. My name's Andrew. I'm head of integrations for REN, and I joined at the start of this year. Kind of a couple months before mainnet hit, and it's been a great ride so far. Excited to talk to you guys.
Awesome. All right, well, let's start it off with an interesting question for those who have been keen to the concept of the total value locked in these DeFi protocols, right? So if you go on DeFi Pulse, you can see all the rankings of all the protocols, but one thing that stands out about REN is that the way that this concept of total value locked in REN, it's a bit different than, say, 𝗂𝗍 or Compound. Right, so could you briefly explain to our listeners kind of what does the idea of total value locked in REN mean, and kind of how is it a lot different from those of a borrowing and lending protocol like 𝗂𝗍?
Sure. I can take this. So the total value locked is kind of two parts there. So the first is, I'm just going to go off of the DeFi Pulse, kind of how they measure it. So they measure it in two components. The first is how much value or how much REN is bonded in the network and is running dark nodes. So right now we have over 1,000 dark nodes. So they're counting kind of that value locked. So in order to run a dark node, you need to have 100,000 REN, and you need to bond that in order to, be able to participate in the network. So that's kind of one area of total value locked. However, the real value, total value locked, is the amount of Bitcoin, Zcash, and Bcash that is currently under RenVM's custody. So the way people use RenVM is that they give RenVM custody of their assets that aren't normally compatible with Ethereum, and then RenVM will allow them to mint a one-to-one representation of that onto Ethereum. So anytime somebody has RenBTC, there's a one-to-one matching amount of Bitcoin that's in RenVM's custody. So the total value locked in RenVM, when it comes to kind of other people's assets, is going to be, the total Bitcoin Cash and Zcash that's under RenVM's custody. And then, DeFi Pulse guys also kind of count the total REN bonded in the network is also kind of value locked in the system.
Right. So you guys are kind of like the bridge in between the Ethereans and their whole idea and the Bitcoin maximalists and their maximalism. So you guys are a bit of like this bridge here. And I think these two communities are very strong and polarizing. And I mean, there's been a lot of debate and whatnot on Twitter. So how do you guys kind of manage that idea, right? Like in the team, in the protocol, like how do you guys go about on a day to day with this idea of Bitcoin maximalism and Bitcoin on Ethereum just kind of like those two ideas that kind of, they oftentimes will butt heads and fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the maximalists are, kind of a bit silly. I mean, really what RenVM does is it brings utility for both of these assets. It provides more utility for Ethereum, right? It has all these cross-chain assets that are bringing more liquidity into the ecosystem. And for, the Bitcoin guys, they have, now they have an opportunity to earn yield on their Bitcoin in addition to maintaining price exposure. So, I mean, I really think, it benefits all parties involved, in fact. So that's kind of the stance we take. We're very agnostic. And, there's other maximalists out there, there's, the Polkadot guys and all these other ecosystems, right? And again, we're just bringing more utility to these ecosystems. So yeah, I think it's really a benefit to the space at large.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off of that, I think it's a pretty common belief, but nobody really talks about a lot, which is that there's kind of a silent majority out there that really doesn't care too much, or at least will be open-minded to the functionality of using Bitcoin on Ethereum to earn some extra yield, and that the loudest people on Twitter are the vast minority of people that hold, Bitcoin and want to use it on Ethereum, right? So I think we've seen that play out with our traction so far.
Yeah, it does seem like the tribalism tends to increase when prices start to go up. That kind of triggers, people getting into their own bubble of some sort. But, how does REN kind of play into the interactions with these different protocols? Because it's kind of an arm on its own, because it brings in Bitcoin, where a lot of these other L2 protocols are focused on collateralizing ERC20 tokens. So, without getting too technical, how does REN integrate with some of these other protocols to produce the most yield, whether that's on Bitcoin, on Ethereum, for whatever combination?
Sure. Yeah, so I can start at a high level of what RenVM is and how its model kind of fits into this, and then I could kind of explain how people are using it right now with Bitcoin and Ethereum.
That'd be great, yeah.
Yeah, so RenVM is a place where people park their assets and as they move it across blockchains. So for instance, I give RenVM custody my Bitcoin, and then RenVM is kind of this almost like a trusted third party to the Ethereum chain. But because RenVM is a network, no one person can kind of control this quote unquote trusted third party. But essentially, users are parking all different types of assets in its custody. And then RenVM, because it returns a signature that kind of verifies, hey, I've received this amount of money in kind of a decentralized way, you're able to basically print one-to-one representations of the value that it has on all sorts of different other blockchains. I know it's a little bit abstract, but you can think of it almost as a decentralized custodian. So this allows us to do Bitcoin on Ethereum right now, but for instance, you'll be able to put, say another coin onto, a destination chain like Polkadot or anything else like that. And so what users are doing right now is they're saying, okay, I'm going to give Bitcoin over to RenVM. RenVM is going to, after 6 confirmations, going to return back information that verifies that deposit. And then I take that information and I print myself one-to-one representation of RenBTC. And then I go and I use that RenBTC on Ethereum because it's now in the Ethereum file format to lend out and to maybe borrow against. And so what we're seeing is Bitcoin is a really, really good collateral because, of its fixed supply and because of its, kind of tremendous amount of liquidity on the centralized world. And people want to borrow it to collateralize different positions and things like that in DeFi. So we think, I don't want to say we think, I think Bitcoin is actually a phenomenal type of collateral that can be used in DeFi, which has normally been reserved for, say, Ethereum or some other assets.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off that a bit as well. I mean, here's kind of another way to think about how we position ourselves. So RenVM is really bringing interoperability to DeFi, right? Versus, building an L1 and then asking people to build on us, you know what I mean? Kind of like the Polkadots and the Cosmoses. I mean, we're essentially, Bitcoiners don't have to do anything. The Ethereum folks don't have to do anything. We're pretty much, working with their file formats, right? If you will. So that advantage from a UX perspective has I think is one of our major advantages, right? So, Bitcoin, you can't really build on Bitcoin, right? So you just kind of have to accept it as it is. And yeah, working with all these legacy assets, I think has really provided a unique advantage that RenVM has. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I was using it like maybe 2 weeks ago just for a very simple transfer. And I mean, it's so simple. And to me, it's like at this point, if you're aware of what's going on in DeFi and you have Bitcoin, why would you not try to take it and put it through the VM and then use it either in Curve or even in Yearn soon, right? Like why would you not try to earn yield? And the only thing that I could think of was the risks. And so on my mind, it's like, okay, so I can have my coins in a ledger, super, extremely safe, probably the highest form of safety. But what is it that we can basically do for either awareness or marketing to other people who own Bitcoin and bring them, to the Ethereum chain through REN, right? Like how can we explain these risks in a concise way, and then also like try to advocate for the usage of having people effectively put their cold storage or their Bitcoin to work and make it a productive asset? Have you guys thought about your marketing or your angles in that sense to speak to those who just have this Bitcoin on a cold wallet that's not really doing much?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing to attract someone to utilize RenVM and RenBTC is really the yield at the end of the day. It is that utility that we mentioned. By you're maintaining exposure to Bitcoin, but you're also earning this extra yield, and that is just wicked attractive, and we've seen that kind of play out over the last few months, right? And as for the risks, I mean, our CTO always says this, the safest place for Bitcoin is always going to be on the Bitcoin chain. Any custody, any solution, WBTC, RenBTC, and any variant that kind of follows this custodial model, there is some inherent risk, right? You have Bitcoin chain risk, you have the Ethereum chain risk, and then you have a custodial risk on top of that, right? So you are compounding risk by doing all these things, and that is kind of why the yield is so high at this point. I mean, we're taking a very measured approach to all this. We're kind of making sure we're auditing all our code piece by piece. We're open sourcing it piece by piece. So if a bug is indeed discovered, it's isolated to that specific repo, right? So trust and safety is really gained over time, and we're taking a slow and measured approach. And then of course, we'll be speaking to this as our code comes out and all this good stuff over the coming months. So I think time is really the best metric for assessing trust, right? That the longer we go without an issue, the better, right? So that's really our model here. And Andrew, feel free to jump in on that if you'd like.
Yeah. Just to kind of emphasize, like I think a big number that says 8% yield on your Bitcoin, that is the best marketing we can have. And I think also on maybe on a minor point, also like all the different, because if you think about DeFi right now, DeFi is a competing version of some of the more centralized versions you've seen, such as, at the 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵, like BlockFi is seeing tremendous success, and kind of other centralized places where you can give them your Bitcoin and then earn yield on that. However, if you're a centralized company, you have to do kind of invasive user verification. That's kind of archaic and not really that effective. That's kind of one other, every time a company gets hacked and user data is leaked, that's another marketing event for DeFi in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and Michael, you mentioned kind of the best remedy for trust is time. And I thought that was a great point that you made. I know I certainly take that position. When I try to understand these new protocols that come out, I often try to relate them to something else that's been out before, because DeFi and cryptocurrency moves at such a fast pace that it is sometimes difficult to, keep up if you try to understand things independently without building on one another. So, to try and, I guess, minimize that blind trust and give people some more insight, part of that is education and making sure that your audience understands kind of the interworkings of the protocol. So could you just, I guess I'll give a little explanation, and if you could correct me if I'm wrong, just to, better summarize some of the other ways that people might understand REN. It sounds a lot like MakerDAO, where there's an algorithmic peg to a stablecoin, and you mint off this collateral. But in the REN protocol, you're minting from Bitcoin to REN Bitcoin. So could you maybe explain some of the similarities and differences, and if that one-to-one between Bitcoin and REN is always kept, or if it's more of an algorithmic peg like we see with DAI and MakerDAO?
Yeah, I think actually the easiest way to think about RenVM and RenBTC is really to model it after the WBTC model, right? So WBTC takes the Bitcoin, it custodials it, 𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗵 custodials it, and then they mint a one-for-one representation. That is literally pretty much the exact same thing RenVM and RenBTC does, right? We take the Bitcoin, it's custodialed, but it's custodialed in a decentralized network, right? So that private key isn't held in one node, it's held in multiple nodes, and it's split up into kind of thousands of little pieces. And anytime there's a mint and burn, they kind of reconvene and combine that private key and allows RenVM to mint or burn BTC. So I think actually that's a better kind of reference point, in fact. So it's not algorithmically pegged or anything like that. It really is just a decentralized custodian that takes custody of assets as they move in between blockchains.
And that actually sounds like a much better format, which, MakerDAO has that soft peg or that algorithmic peg. But I know people, especially in DeFi now, as it continues to grow, people are worried about that fractional reserve banking philosophy being translated into DeFi. So something like, wrapped BTC or RenBTC that, simply just collateralizes it and shifts custody, I think has a quicker path to trust. And you mentioned time, is the best remedy. I think people are a little bit more trusting of something like that because it's easier to understand, okay, the custody is shifted, but, my money is still my money. Essentially, I still have ownership of my money.
Right. And yeah, I think we've seen that with WBTC. I mean, fun fact, we actually helped start WBTC back in early 2019. I think January 2019. It was ourselves, 𝗵𝗵𝗴𝗵 and 𝗵𝗂, right? And at first it really didn't gain a lot of traction. A lot of people were kind of put off by the fact that there was a centralized custodian, and it didn't really gain that much traction. I think really since 2020 it's really quite taken off. And that is, it's had a year of success, and they're not freezing anyone's addresses, no hacks or anything like that, and 𝗵𝗂's a great organization, right? So they run a tight ship, and I think that is actually an example of how time does kind of convey trust over a certain period, right? Yeah, so I'll leave it at that, and Andrew, feel free to add anything in.
Yeah, I was curious as to if you guys were friends or competitors, or if you guys collaborate. How does that work? Because ultimately at this point there is really two choices that I've seen from my experience to bring in any form of Bitcoin on Ethereum. It's either wrapped Bitcoin or REN Bitcoin. So what's the relationship like there, if there is one? I mean, you just said how you guys help them build, but to this day, kind of what's the relationship there?
Yeah, it's certainly amicable. I mean, we're big fans of the team, and like I said, we've been working with them for quite a long time. And really, what I see it, we complement each other. Really, at the end of the day, right? So there's some institutional, organizations that would actually prefer to work with WBTC because if something happens, they have someone to sue, right? And in our case, that it certainly is. It's just not possible. So for certain clients, WBTC is going to be a better fit, and for certain other individuals, RenBTC is going to be a better fit. So we think there's room for both, and we actually think they complement each other. And in fact, Andrew built a WBTC cafe, which I'll let him touch on and kind of the benefits there.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. That sounds interesting. What is that?
Yeah, so with RenVM, you can basically use RenVM and RenBTC in a very composable way, which means you can actually use minting RenBTC as kind of a one Lego piece in a more complicated set of actions on chain, and what you can do here is, what we did is we set up a wrap Bitcoin to REN Bitcoin pool on Curve. So this is a liquidity pool where you can basically swap REN BTC for wrap Bitcoin or wrap Bitcoin for REN Bitcoin at very low slippage. And then what we did is we said, okay, we built a UI and said, hey, send Bitcoin to this Bitcoin address, and out the other side, you'll get wrap Bitcoin. And under the hood, what you're doing is you're actually doing two steps. You're doing the first step of getting REN BTC, and then you're immediately swapping that for wrap Bitcoin, and then getting wrap Bitcoin on the other side of there. And so what's cool there is that the user gets the best of both worlds, right? REN Bitcoin RenVM wins because we get the volume. Wrap Bitcoin gets an easier user experience. Users aren't really minting wrap Bitcoin; they're just kind of swapping it at low slippage, and the user gets kind of a better user experience. And also the kind of the extra peace of mind that they want with wrap Bitcoin there. So we kind of see is at the end of the day, like if you're gonna hold a gajillion dollars on chain, maybe wrap Bitcoin might be, and you're doing that on behalf of say other clients, other third-party clients, maybe you're gonna want wrap Bitcoin because it has that kind of extra real-world insurance. However, if you're using it for DEX or using for some of these more complex situations, RenBTC might actually help you get the job way way faster and way more capitally efficient.
Nice. I didn't quite realize that Wrap Bitcoin was actually a more centralized version of REN. I mean, obviously it's a lot different, but that's good stuff there. So this one's actually from the community. So we put out a poll and we asked what they would be more interested in hearing from. The options were the future of REN Bridge, when REN Moon, and a few others. But the one that we got the most interest from was the future of REN Bridge. So I'm assuming people are interested to hear about if there's going to be more assets that we can bring onto Ethereum. How is REN Bridge going to improve over the next 6 months or year, and kind of like what the future is looking like. So do you guys have any insights that our audience would like to hear?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working on RenBridge 2.0, in fact, as we speak. Now we're getting the design files going and all that good stuff. So we're pretty excited to have it out. And really, there's a few things we're working on. First and foremost is adding more assets, right? Adding the Doge coins and, another another destination chain like Polkadot. So allowing individuals to move assets, to Ethereum, but also to Polkadot as well. So we're expanding our assets that are supported by RenVM, and RenBridge will be an avenue to do that, right? And then second of all is really ensuring that it is as easy as possible to use, because we are kind of adding a new dynamic to things, right? We've got Bitcoiners that have never used MetaMask or paid for gas, with Ethereum. So we're trying to simplify, we're trying to make it like dead simple, basically, so it cannot be messed up, right? But, we've, since it's gone out, we've seen, some people sending Bitcoin to the wrong address and like forgetting that they have to have gas to actually complete the transaction and all that stuff. So yeah, we're trying to streamline it a bit, make it super simple. So it really does become this universal tool to move assets to different chains. So yeah, we're excited for that, and it should be coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of in uncharted territory here. We're going to be quickly approaching that where, on RenBridge, it's kind of for the first time, you're going to be able to fluidly transfer value like between Ethereum and Polkadot directly, or Bitcoin and Polkadot, kind of like all these crisscross different combinations there. It's like interoperability has kind of been a thing for a little while now in the blockchain space, but nobody's really truly done like a general purpose interoperability for pretty much all chains and every chain. And I think you'll see on RenBridge, interesting UX and UI that kind of helps users do exactly that. So.
Yeah, we've certainly seen interoperability attempted before in some of these different coins and these different protocols, but it hasn't been seamless and it hasn't been fluid. We were talking, I think, Andrew, before you got into the Zoom room, we've had like 20 failed transactions. Andy mentioned his, and I know I've had quite a few myself. So it's difficult, to keep all of, what you need, whether it's Ethereum or gas, to support a transaction. You need to be aware of all those things. So some of the UXs that are out there now don't offer that. So I'm sure it's really going to be an attention grabber when RenBridge 2.0 launches.
For sure, and it takes a ton of work just to get the basics like really smooth, like on RenBridge, just going kind of to and from. It like under the hood, like there's just a ton that can go wrong, and so I kind of equate it to, because I came from kind of the traditional fintech world, and it's kind of like if you were building Instagram, and when you're uploading the photo, like half the time the cell network would just, the wireless radio would just like go out. Like that's like some of the stuff you kind of have to deal with sometimes. Like sometimes users submit a transaction, it just doesn't get picked up by Ethereum, and then now we have to handle kind of this weird, crazy situation. So getting the basics is kind of tough, but I think we've been able to do, I think, pretty well so far, and I think when we add more destination chains, yeah, it'll be fun.
Cross-chain everything, cross-chain it all, everything. What
Sure.
Is there an ETA for the 2.0?
So no concrete ETA, but what we're shooting for this fall.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Would you guys be open to telling our audience about that transfer today, the milestone on the REN network, and kind of how those type of transfers and all the activity in the VM help to accrue value for the REN token itself? Because nowadays there is this idea and stigma and philosophy of if the token isn't accruing real value, then what is it worth? So I'm sure we'd love to hear about kind of how REN accrues value through the REN VM, and about the milestone that you guys had today.
Yeah, so I think right before we hopped on this podcast, I think we had our highest mint to date. So that's 1,000 BTC moving through RenVM. So pretty psyched about it. And we've been seeing a lot of those lately with the advent of Curve and all that good stuff. So yeah, super excited. Now with that said, I mean, really, I think RenVM and the REN token holders, and by virtue of the dark node, or those who run dark nodes, can see in real time the value that's accrued, right? So for that, 1,000 BTC transfer, 10 bips of that is going to all the dark node holders, and it's being split evenly, and it's in real time. So every time someone moves an asset across RenVM, you can see a fee being accrued essentially. And I think that tangible takeaway really is, I think, kind of unique. I don't see a lot of protocols that can show that to their users. And again, I mean, it's real. It's not like you're getting BTC as the fee. It's not like you're getting some inflated token or something like that as a result. Everyone that runs a dark node gets their fees in the assets that's transferred, right? So you get real BTC, real Zcash, and real Bitcoin Cash every time it moves across the bridge. So we think that's pretty unique, and we've seen it, obviously been well received by the community. And I think to this date, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think dark nodes are pretty much earning around 5% APY as of right now. So I mean, it's been quite successful. So we're pretty happy about it.
So just a little bit on the interworkings. Is it a payday essentially for a dark node each time that someone mints REN BTC?
Yeah, so the fees are collected and distributed on a monthly basis. So you don't extract them at that moment, right? The fees kind of occur throughout the month, and then every epoch, it's basically it's a 30-day time period. Those fees are distributed to dark nodes, and they can keep them in our command center, which is kind of the user interface we use to manage dark nodes. They can keep it in there, or they can withdraw it at the end of every month. Yeah, so that's it.
Gotcha. And Andrew, kind of bringing it back to interoperability, you mentioned kind of all of the Ethereum, the Bitcoin being added to the network, and how REN can bridge each of those chains. I want to mention kind of a joke that I saw, but it was actually kind of turned into something serious, much like the circulating supply of Ethereum. That kind of started as a joke, and then it kind of turned into something that people were concerned about. I have kind of a similar story. So I saw what it was supposed to be a joke tweet. It said something like, all of this Bitcoin is now being put to use on the Ethereum blockchain. So what happens when all of Bitcoin is now collateralized on these other chains, if you take that to an extreme? And for lots of reasons, not all of the Bitcoin is going to be on these other chains, but it brings up an important point of scaling. And as more Bitcoin is collateralized, how does that affect the Bitcoin network? Does it make it less secure? Are miners less efficient? And then how is it going to affect the Ethereum network, and as well as your protocol? How do you see this scaling playing out?
Yeah, no, for sure. Those are good questions. Man, I think with Bitcoin, not a huge expert on other as others are on Bitcoin. I would say, at the end of the day, when Bitcoin is on another chain, it's still on the Bitcoin network. It's just on an address that's kind of locked up, and so it's not like it kind of disappears from the UTXO set. There's still a UTXO on Bitcoin that is still there. It's just in custody of RenVM, right? I think it's great for Bitcoin, even though maxis don't agree. So I think in this case, Ethereum is kind of like a layer 2 for Bitcoin. So it does decrease the amount of transaction throughput in theory on the native Bitcoin chain. So I think in my naive Bitcoin brain, I would see that maybe possibly is a good thing. I think also, Bitcoin has seen a narrative shift from P2P internet cash to buy a coffee to digital gold bars that you're going to run the entire world off of, which is great. I think basic credit markets, basic peer-to-peer internet credit markets are how you 10x the utility of Bitcoin as a global collateral. And Ethereum is literally finding product market fit over the last 8 to 10 months based on this exact use case. And so putting Bitcoin on Ethereum there, I think it vastly grows the application space for Bitcoin as a collateral, as a worldwide collateral. That's permissionless. I think on the Ethereum side, I think it's good for Ethereum. I think it's necessary. It probably takes a little bit of attention away from ETH, the asset. I think Bitcoin on Ethereum kind of violates the narrative for kind of the ETH is money philosophy, because it's a provable fixed supply, so it's naturally a better collateral than the fuzziness of ETH's current supply. So I think for other layer ones that are smart contract capable, I'm kind of our resident bull on a lot of these other kind of smart contract platforms, because I think with those, if Polkadot was on its own, I think it would have a tough job. But I think Polkadot with RenVM is actually, I think we actually I'm biased, but I think we actually enable their success in a lot of ways, because now we can bridge over assets that people already use. And so I think Ethereum needs to figure out how to scale, and needs to figure out how to scale pretty quickly. Because in a space that moves so fast, I could see a year from now, other smart contract platforms not stealing the show from Ethereum, but being competitive. And I think at the end of the day, capital will find yield, and they don't care if they have to download a new wallet to do so.
Yeah.
So
I think I have one more technical question, and it's funny kind of how the Ethereum killer narrative is coming back, because they're just taking so long with ETH 2.0 and their gas fees. So it'll be interesting to see if they lose that first mover effect by taking so long with their 2.0 launch. The last technical question I had was kind of how RenBTC as a bridge between these different chains differs from some more the L1 interoperability functions that we had seen being developed, like atomic swaps and some of these other inter-blockchain functions. How does RenBTC adapt some of that original technology and then add your own flavor and your own spin on it?
Yeah, for sure. Our kind of decentralized custodian nature is what really shines here, because it's a very simple model. Give your assets to this custodian, and this custodian will mint you a one-to-one representation. And that allows RenVM to be really, really flexible. Because our newly invented way of doing SMBC, we're basically just, at the end of the day, when you get down to the most base layer, we're just a wallet. We're just a wallet, and we allow you to park funds there and I'm taking the liberties. I'm sure Long would definitely disagree on how I would frame that, but at a high level, that's what we do there. Other approaches are just much more bespoke. So for atomic swaps, you're always going to be limited by the capabilities of the network that you're operating with. So, like for instance, the way in which Bitcoin scripts do, atomic swaps. Like, for instance, an atomic swap, you have a free 48. Atomic swaps are done using a kind of a time lock contract. And how that works is that essentially, one of those parties can back out at a particular time. Also, with atomic swaps, so during a period, users can kind of have a free option to actually flake out on the actual transaction. So for HTLC swaps, for other atomic swaps, you also, they're very expensive on chain as well. And so for us, our model is like, you just need to send funds to this address, and then this secondary network will verify that in a decentralized way. It's a much more flexible option. And so if you're developing atomic swaps for each connection to each network, you're going to naturally run into more limitations than you would with RenVM. Now, RenVM is dependent on other capabilities of the other networks, but not to the extent that other methods that use atomic swaps would be.
Yeah, the atomic swaps kind of came from, I think, from Eric Voorhees at Shapeshift. I believe way back in the day, we actually had them come to our club in university on like a Zoom meeting or something, and he talked to us, and that kind of reminds me of RenVM, but obviously a tad different, as you explained. To kind of piggyback off that idea of more decentralized in the VM state, what's the governance like at Ren? Right, so do the token holders are they eligible to play around with any of the governance? Is it only those who run the dark nodes? Is there governance? What is the governance structure like at REN? And is there any further plans to further decentralize?
Yeah, of course. So currently, kind of in our bootstrapping phase, the team basically has control of the protocol and kind of what proposals move forward and all that good stuff. And it's just a matter of us being early, and this is more of a prudence approach more than anything. It's like, if something goes wrong, we can act quickly, right? As soon as you turn it over to, a host of individuals across the world, things move very slow as a result, right? You need to get cooperation and agreement on all proposals, and that takes time. So in the early stages, we're kind of overseeing the governance aspect, but kind of as we speak, in fact, we're designing the governance framework to essentially decentralize the decision making and how proposals move forward within the protocol. So we'll soon be releasing the REN forum, in which people, it's very similar to the MakerDAO forum and kind of other similar RIP proposal systems, basically. So someone will have a proposal, there'll be a discussion, and it'll be voted on, and then it'll move forward based on the number of votes. And we're going to keep it kind of simple at first, and then as time goes on, it'll become more advanced and sophisticated. But yeah, so there's a lot kind of being settled and worked out as we speak. But essentially, dark nodes will indeed have some governance capacity if they choose to, and that really will be the main. The dark node holders and those who hold REN will indeed have the ability to participate in governance. So no, we're definitely looking forward to it. It's just a matter of prudence and kind of moving slow, because once you start a governance system, you can't take it back, right? It is let out in the wild, and if something is done incorrectly, then there's really no way to recover it, right? So we're taking our time there, and governance is a tricky subject. Nation states are still trying to find the most efficient way to govern a population, right? So it is by no means solved, and we're seeing a variety of proposals out in the crypto world right now. Some being successful, some not, some aren't being successful. So we're kind of sitting on the sidelines, seeing what makes sense, and then we'll move forward in due time. But that's where we are. There should be some news about that aspect of the protocol this fall as well. So we're definitely looking forward to it.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's no real rush, as you said. Once it's out there, and there's no, you can change it, but then once you start to change it, then you get into the realm of the Ethereum and the ETC hard forks and the community splits and all sorts of other issues that can arise, with the governance and the voting and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so we are almost out of time here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a rapid fire round for either of you guys, or we can do both. And basically, we'll ask you a few questions, and then they'll be short. And if you want to answer in a sentence or two max, if you don't want to answer, you can pass. And yeah, so who wants to go first?
Sounds good. I'll take the lead.
All right, beautiful. So first question, will Dogecoin ever be on Ethereum?
Yes, we're bringing it to Ethereum as we speak.
DOT or Atom ecosystem, and why?
Tough call. I'd say DOT, because that's what we're working with right now. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'd say DOT. That's where all the cool kids in Berlin are working.
Yeah.
Nice. NFTs and gaming, is this the next big thing in 2020? And if not, what is?
No, I don't think so. I think it'll take another year or two, in my opinion.
Yeah, not in 2020. Man, I don't know. I think interoperability will be the big thing.
Yeah, agreed.
REN in the top 10 on CoinMarketCap by the end of the year?
We will pass on that particular question.
Okay. And then last one. If you had to pitch a celebrity on REN, who would it be, and what would you say?
Elon Musk, big fans, of course. And really, we're a universal nexus point for value transfer, and I think that's a huge benefit for the world, in fact. We make, moving assets, regardless of type, far more efficient. And I think that'll have a really profound impact on society.
I'd pitch Kanye. I would pitch him. I'd pitch Kanye. I would try to get him to go on some insane, crazy rant about interoperability.
Nice.
So that's actually not so far-fetched, even though Kanye's far-fetched in whatever, in whatever domain he's in. But he's in Wyoming, where they just elected a senator who's like
that's right.
crypto mom.
That's right.
I heard.
Yeah.
And so
What?
there's, I don't know if you want to call it a conspiracy, I don't know what you want to call it, but why Kanye's in Wyoming of all places has got me thinking,
They got no taxes there. The taxes there are absurd. There's
Nice.
it's like nothing.
Look, man. Yeah.
Well, they're really
That's
friendly
true.
to
That's
crypto
true.
too, so that
Kanye's.
we got to make that pitch happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kanye's ahead of the curve, man. No, I don't know. He's primed. He's primed for REN. That's true.
The day that I see Kanye with a REN shill on Twitter is the day that I sell everything.
I think so. Who knows?
Oh man. All right, guys. Well, hey, it was an absolute pleasure. And I know our audience is going to get a lot from this. We do appreciate your time as well. You guys crushed it.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us, guys. And yeah, we'll do it again soon.
Yeah. No, thanks for having us. Great chat.
Any last words from you guys?
No, check us out. Obviously, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them on our Telegram chat. Our Twitter is @REN Protocol. Yeah, so come and join us. And yeah, we'd love to have you. Thanks all.
Yeah, for sure. Bridge.renproject.io if you want to do Bitcoin and Ethereum. And if you're skeptical, @Bitcoin.cafe or WBTC.cafe.
Beautiful.
Thanks for listening to the DeFi by Design podcast. Until next time, DeFi Slate Team.